Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, what is complimentary football other than a figment of our imagination? And Chris Level says if this player plays well, we'll be just fine.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet only $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So visit right now at FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you as we are nearing another weekend, first road weekend of the season for the Red Raiders as they're on their way to Pullman, Washington to hook up with the Cougars of Washington State in the Mike Leach Bowl. We will get to the Pirate before the week is done as he is set to be honored Saturday night in Pullman. But wanted to begin to really take a look at the Cougars in a closer way on today's episode. Also spend some time talking Texas Tech and the thought of complimentary football. Sounds really nice, but mostly has been kind of a figment of a fan's imagination, it seems like, going on for, 10, 20 years or so, but still fun to talk about. We'll get into what exactly that could look like for the Red Raiders, but let's begin with the Cougars and their head coach, Jake Dickert. Obviously, they get a win in week 1 over Portland State. Some eye-popping numbers that were a part of this as far as 70 points on the offensive side for them, but some things also that got some attention as far as the Washington State defense was concerned against Portland State. We'll touch on all of the above, but first let's kick it off taking a listen to Coach Dickert simply talking about the win in week 1.
Well, obviously, from the offensive point, very, very productive. Some of the came away wanting more drives, wanting a little more strain, but how can you complain at the end of the day? Our guys went and made a ton of plays. Just a lot of things to clean up, from effort finish to pad level to communication. Up front, I thought it was really solid, but I think we're capable of more, right? So you take a critical look at every deal. Defensively, we shot ourselves in the foot and played some bad ball at times. That's communicating, it's execution, it's being on the same page, it's jumping off sides on 3rd and 8. It's not getting your eyes right and doing your job in certain capacities. So in the special teams game, I thought it ended up being a little bit of a wash, and really proud of Dean kind of stepping in there. And we always need to make that an advantage on our part, and we kind of missed on a couple things. I thought the opening kickoff, if we take care of a double team, really has a shot to go to the house. So we know where we are right now. That is who our team is. That is who our players are. I thought Portland State played extremely hard, and we took a critical eye and we evaluated all that stuff this morning. We'll adjust those roles, and our learns got to get out there, right? Because biggest thing we talk about is being a mature competitor, and a mature competitor looks at things that he does wrong, doesn't like it, and finds ways to grow and get better. So that's what this football team needs to do.
Not something Texas Tech left week 1 hoping for any more of. Strain. We got a bucket full of that in our experience here in Lubbock, but a little bit different story for the Cougars.
I'm almost offended by Coach Dickert saying that. We just wanted a little more strain, make it a little more difficult. I'm like, we got all of that, didn't we?
That's right. They were like Big Play Central, man.
Yeah, this was to have 11 completions for your quarterback that throws for over 350 yards, and for basically every 2 completions he's throwing, one of them's for a touchdown pass. He throws 5 touchdown passes with 11 completions. That's wild. Yeah. So didn't need to strain. Maybe don't throw it deep there, Jake. If you want a little more strain and having to work for all that, but the Red Raiders they'll come in and they'll provide some of that. You hope it's a whole bucket full of strain for sure. But I think it is fair. It may not mean anything, but I think it's fair that, and you may not like what you know, okay? But I think it's fair to say that Texas Tech knows more about their team from being in the kind of game that they were in versus what Coach Dickert knows about his team. Because I think what he's telling you, we didn't have to work that hard for it. We don't, I don't know how we'll handle adversity. I don't know how we'll handle a close game. I don't know how we'll handle a bad penalty or a turnover. I mean, whatever. I mean, and you're talking about. I rewatched this game. There was one of these. So Washington State, I think, led the country last year in defensive touchdowns with 5. Well, they're 1 for 1 this season because they have a 100-yard interception return. So they already have a defensive touchdown this year. But I'm watching this play just to sum up the game. Not that Portland State is terrible or anything like that. And I think Washington State deserves a ton of credit. But this particular play, it's like the quarterback just drops back and he just throws it. And the only person in the screen is a Coug DB. I'm like, I don't know where you were going with it. You clearly thought you were going to have a guy there. And he just took it, and there's nobody around him. And then 100 yards later, touchdown. So there was some of that, but I think the big play potential, they've got an Oregon transfer and a UNLV transfer at the 2 wide receivers. They're not the biggest guys. We're talking 6 foot, 5'10" type. Let me make sure I get Kyle Williams and Chris Hudson. They were number 1 and number 2. That's who really made a lot of these plays and made less strain possible for Coach Dickert there because of the big play potential from the outside receivers.
Yeah, kind of wild to see pass plays, 59 yards, 39, 52, 33. You had runs of 54 and of 40. So it was just sort of an offensive bonanza for Washington State, which, again, does not bode well for a team that's necessarily questioning their defense leaving week one like Texas Tech is. So the over, anyone, 65.5, something along those lines, I think I've seen this week on FanDuel. But really curious, and this will sort of, again, tie into what we're going to talk about when we get to the complimentary portion of the program. But first, want to make a pit stop on the defensive side of things for Washington State. And obviously, when you're winning a game by 40 and you're able to get off to the start that they were, it was 22-7. Sound familiar? At the end of the first quarter, Chris. So who knows, what type of break was tapped, or is somebody kind of letting up in a way as far as the defensive effort is concerned? I don't necessarily know, but there were some things I thought were fairly interesting defensively that happened there for the Cougars, or to the Cougars. Let's listen again to Coach Dickert talking about the defensive effort in week 1.
I mean, 100% are fixable. Like I said, their scheme keeps you on their heels. I didn't feel like we were attacking. I think, from my point of view as a coach, like we gotta have more things to cut our guys loose. I think the option kind of hesitated what we wanted to do, the unbalanced stuff. Obviously, the running quarterback, there's a lot of different things that they do. So going to see a completely different style this week, and one we're more familiar with. And we got to go out there and play Cougar defense.
Not necessarily anticipating Tech throwing in the option or anything like that, but I do wonder if there's something maybe to take away as far as mobility in a quarterback, or some different options as far as ball carriers, maybe some misdirection that the Red Raiders possibly could apply, that it sounds like, at least to a degree, in a 70-30 win, kept the Cougars defense somewhat on their heels. Not attacking, like you said.
Yeah, I have no doubt that you will cause some problems for Washington State's defense Saturday night. Now, you hope it's a 4 quarters full of problems, but I think you've got enough. And I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth or suggest anything wrong here, but my belief is that.
First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and America's #1 sportsbook is shaking it up to kick off football season with an offer a football fan can't afford to miss. Right now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and of course, you can cancel at any time. Again, from right now through September 22nd, bet $5 and take advantage of a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook.
I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth or suggest anything wrong here, but my belief is that I think you put more chips on the table this weekend with this is a road game, and that's been talked about, and I just think that not that you were purposely holding things back and you just went into, Abilene Christian very vanilla. But I do think that whether it's plays on offense or potential fakes or whatever it may be, I think you do a bit more, carry a bit more into this week, and with the knowledge that we may call some of this stuff, we may show some different things. I think now's the time, and I think you'll cause. Washington State's can be very aggressive, and a lot of times they play press coverage on the outside. We'll see what they decide to do. It may depend on if Taj plays or not. If Taj doesn't play, they may alter their game plan. They may say, we're loading it up if 28 plays. If not, let's back up. Let's let one of these young running backs try to beat us. We don't think he can. I mean, so we'll kind of see how that goes. But I'd be willing to bet you see a little bit more of, maybe some more of Cam Brown, maybe some more of like Jalen Conyers taking a direct snap, maybe more of, some different wrinkles, maybe more Micah Hudson, which I know people would love to see, and all those kinds of things to just really put Washington State on their heels. It's a big game, Calvin.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And you're reading my mind there, because that's what I'm thinking about is Brown as a quarterback and or ball carrier. I'm thinking about Jalen Conyers in the backfield. Thinking about guys like Dre McCray or Micah Hudson. And this mostly, again, is in a world where I guess Taj Brooks would be limited or even absent. I hope that that's not even the case, and we're not living in that world, and it's just straight to number 28. But even so, there's some different options or different muscles maybe that I'd like to see flexed as far as the ground game is concerned. And I do kind of wonder, and again, we'll circle back to this from a complimentary football standpoint, but I do kind of wonder if that's something that could aid in what Texas Tech is maybe struggling with defensively, or the type of challenge that they're up against, given the Cougar offense. But as we're touching on what Texas Tech may be doing offensively, I did want to get back to Coach Dickert again and his view from afar of the Red Raider offense.
Obviously, they're high-powered. I believe at the end of the season, 12 games from now, Texas Tech's offense will be top 10 in the country. I think since they went to this quarterback last year, it just kind of clicked. They're rolling. He's confident. They got a bunch of receivers around there. I think they upgraded at the offensive line, and the tailback's going to be the best all-time rusher in Texas Tech football history. And I don't know their history per se, but I would imagine that's pretty good. So they're dynamic. They're explosive. Obviously, Coach Arbuckle trained under their offensive coordinator. So, they have our playbook. We have their playbook. Right, who's going to execute and who's going to play harder and go out there and win a big-time football game in a great environment. So the challenges are high, but we feel confident that we can go out there and play our game too.
Just one of many layers to this contest, Chris. He mentions the playbooks there, and golly, just crossovers that might take you, I don't know, more than two hands to tally up if you're trying to think about all the familiarity between these two programs.
And before we go to that, I do want to tell Coach Dickert, James Gray was pretty good. Mr. Hadnot was pretty good. Ricky Williams was pretty good. Byron Hanspart was pretty good. Bam Morris was pretty good. DeAndre Washington was pretty good. So it is a big deal as far as running back history and thing. I imagine that's pretty good. You imagine
Torian Henderson.
That's Torian Henderson. Yeah, that's right.
That
I love that. Okay, so the familiarity, the first thing that's going to get the most pub in this one, just because he's the one player playing, is Josh Kelly. That's the first immediate that everybody's going to pay attention to. He was a top player for them last year. He's now what you expect to be a top player for you. So that clearly is an in-your-face deal. The other most recent is the Clay McGuire thing, which also adds more familiarity on the Washington State side, as I'll get to in a second, but Clay McGuire would have finished his second stint coaching at Washington State. He was with Mike 2012 to 17-ish, and then left to go do some different things and work for some other people. And then he came back 2 or 3 years ago, I think, when Coach Dickert got the job. So whenever Clay comes back home, and back in March, I guess it was, or February, whatever it was, they hired Jared Castor, who is in the Ben Arbuckle, Zach Kitley kind of world with the Houston Baptist and all that stuff. And so, yeah, he ends up was like, man, he knows this offense. So let's just promote or give a Jared Castor a call. Jared Castor obviously played football at Texas Tech. It continues. There's and so many of these things have Mike Leach ties, but the other two staff members on your team are former players. But Antonio Huffman spent about 6 years up in Pullman and was a big part of Mike's tenure up there before coming back ultimately to Texas Tech whenever Matt Wells got the job here. And I remember Mike was none too pleased with Antonio whenever he did leave and come back here. And it was a compliment. I mean that because it's like, I think Huff is really, really good at what he does. The other one that just got back here, and I talked to him on the field before the game Saturday, one of my favorite all-time players at Texas Tech, because one of my favorite defensive players in general was Marcus Coleman. Okay, that was when I was going to school at Tech. But Darcel McBath he played in that 07-08 range. This is a second-round pick by the Broncos. This is a really good football player. And when he got into coaching, Mike hired him to be like quality control for a year, and then he was a corners coach for a year. And he actually left Pullman to go to Starkville in Stark, Vegas, and was a part of Mike's staff there at Mississippi State. But he's got some time up at Washington State. But the Ben Arbuckle thing is wild because this is somebody that worked for Zach Kitley twice. And there's a lot of familiarity. And because of that, there's also another graduate assistant component. Colt Garrett from Lubbock Roosevelt was a quarterback here in Lubbock and then played quarterback at Tech. He traveled a little bit and didn't ever really play, but I think from 16, 17, and 18 on Cliff's teams. So he's a GA for Washington State. So you got a million, like, oddly enough, between Washington State and Texas Tech that haven't really played each other. And it's all ultimately kind of Mike Leach ties if you want to go that route. But, a lot more familiarity than you would think.
Yeah, and to whose advantage? I don't know. I'm kind of wondering. I guess maybe if you have that much crossover, I don't know, is it kind of a wash and you're just relying again on the Jims and the Joes to make the difference? But kind of as he talks about there, we got their playbook, they got our playbook. We'll just see who executes better. But that's going to be a really interesting wrinkle to this matchup as we get there Saturday night in Pullman. I'm kind of curious to kind of go back to some of what we saw in week one for Washington State and how this could lead into maybe what the Red Raiders are trying to do in week two, and the all-encompassing thought of playing complementary football. First, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And they're not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which make it the best place to find the right hire. Gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive for you. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates to choose from. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within only 24 hours. That's lightning fast. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier as well. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker, plus more effective. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today. Terms and conditions apply. The all-encompassing thought of playing complementary football. Something that every coach mentions, something that every fan, I think, wishes for, particularly if you were a Texas Tech fan, because we have seen some really lopsided football teams as far as, the balance of power, like what's getting you through a day over the years, which to me is not anything resembling complementary football. Now, I do think you can still be a team that plays complementary football when, say, your offense is a lot better than your defense or vice versa. But I think that requires a head coach and some coordinators who are, somewhat compensating for that fact, cognizant of that fact. And a lot of times it hasn't really resembled that. I remember back in the Cliff Kingsbury era, I would get extremely frustrated. I'm talking back to great vexation, Chris, because you would have a defense on skates going backwards over and over and over. And I thought, okay, well, the head coach obviously sees this. So I wonder if maybe he'll curtail some of what he likes to do offensively as far as breakneck speed. Nope. Let's chuck it 3 times, take about 30 seconds off of the clock and punt and get them right back out there. And some of this was like in the days of DeAndre Washington, where you had a ball carrier that I really feel like maybe could have aided in that effort. And the reason I bring it up as it relates to Washington State's week 1 is because I do think some of that, when you're dealing with a defense that has not been playing well or will not be expected to play well necessarily, or you're going up against a high-powered offense. I mean, it's the answer that so many came up with when facing Mike Leach's offenses. Okay, well, what's our best defense against this? Keep them off of the field. Keep them on the sideline. Keep Graham Harrell and Michael Crabtree on the bench. Well, how do we do that? I don't know. Maybe we're a little bit more methodical in trying to sustain drives and really extend things. And again, what's, I think, the simplest way to maybe think about doing that? To me, it's involving a ground game. And there was one thing that stood out to me about what Portland State was able to do offensively, and it was particularly in the second half that they were able to run the football a little bit. I mean, I think they had around 130 rushing yards for the first 2 quarters. It was over 5 yards per carry. Now, I know when you're talking option and things like that, it comes in a different variety, obviously, than what Texas Tech is going to be dialing up. But I just kind of wonder, is some of what I'm describing as far as maybe overtly involving a ground game to try to help a defense that is suffering or struggling a little bit, is that just like a naive fan's thought? Is that like video game approach thoughts that doesn't really play out in the real world? Is that asking a team or an offense to change too much what they are to where maybe then that's not even effective? How do you kind of approach a head coach and those coordinators trying to sort of balance the power when things are lopsided? We can't all be Alabama, where it's like, hey, every group you throw out there is really, really good, so do whatever you want to. Does that question make sense? And am I talking in real world terms, or do you think these are more like, message board section 108 terms?
Shout out to the people in section 108. Love you all.
That's right.
Because what Joey talked about the other day was like complementary football. It's almost like his team's having a tug of war with each other. And I'll talk about what you're talking about in a second. But
yeah,
it's like you have a big kickoff return, all this momentum, and you end up settling for a field goal. That's square peg, round hole. This doesn't go together. Whereas the other time you had the big kickoff return, it's like go for the throat, flea flicker, boom. Like, I mean, you complemented each other. Like special teams complemented what the offense was trying to do, vice versa. But it's like trading 4th down stops. It's like you go down and you get stuffed on 4th down, and then you come back and I think you stop them on a 4th down. That's, I guess, somewhat complementary football. It's what I think what frustrates coaches is when other sides of the ball can't take advantage of something that's positive. Like here, we strip sack, we give you the ball, and it's like then you turn it over or miss a field goal or don't convert anything. And it's like, okay, what are we doing here? We're not working together. And you can talk about it all you want, and everybody knows, well, of course we want to try to take advantage of this, but being able to do it and having the maturity of no letdown, or to get your mind right and not get caught up in the emotional moment, like, oh man, we got the ball back. Let's go out here and lay an egg. You try to avoid the old egg laying there and all that stuff. So it's because it's kind of like to use because what you're talking about too is like I thought there's been times where, like just to go back to the Cliff era, were times when you were foot on the gas and it's not helping the other side of the ball. The one thing I'm curious about is, did they feel like they couldn't grind it? Did they feel like this was what our offense was, and this is why versatility is king? You need to have somebody on your pitching staff that can throw 101, but then you need to have somebody on your pitching staff that can strike you out with an 82-mile-an-hour changeup, because then the runner or the batter is befuddled. They don't know. And I think that's why versatility is key in this day and age. You got to be able to win in different ways. And there's going to be a level of balance here. I said it on the broadcast the other day. It made me a bit nervous in the last drive in regulation, and you ended up settling for field goal. Are you going too fast?
Thank you.
But it was working, and then you slowed it down, and then it didn't.
And so, then there's what time left on the clock?
Like 3 or 4 minutes or whatever it was. And
a lot of people are noticing that.
Yeah, that's right. And so there's just a lot of different ways to go about it. And I do think that tempo these days is something that teams use more and more as the game goes along, because there is a truth to getting the opposition tired. Like if we're going to run back and throw it, and you're going to try to come after the quarterback, your 60th or 70th time of doing that, you're tired. And so I think there's a level of putting the team on their heels as the game goes along when you do go tempo. But yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know if you are good enough, because and the example is the 4th and 1 on the goal line. I don't know if you're good enough right now to say, we're running it. I don't care if we're handing it to this dude. He may go this way or he may go that way, but he's going one of the two. Good luck. And we're gonna get our 10 yards every 3 plays. I don't know if you're there yet.
Well,
I
was just gonna say, that's what I mean by, like, I know there's a balance where you don't want to try and fit into another man's suit. Well, we're not built for this. We can't just flip the script. So I get some of that thought of like, no, we kind of have to continue to do this, because that's what we're best suited for, even if it does, I guess, put the defense in a bind sometimes. Of course, if you're just going out there and scoring, I don't know if that's ever necessarily in a bind. And some of the time stuff, I mean, that kind of falls in a different category when we're talking about management. And I know some of that is frustrating to fans. It's frustrating to me. I've never been, paid 6 or 7 figures to coordinate an offense, so I will defer to those that are, and the logic in some of those situations. And obviously there are things also happening at the line of scrimmage with the quarterback and how he kind of controls those things as well, I would guess, and checking in or out of plays and some of those decisions made there. But obviously when you are in a game that you don't like the result of, one of those wins that you have to bounce back from, kind of like we're enduring here in West Texas this week, well, you pick apart every little thing. Whenever you get a win by any means, anyhow, against an opponent that is of substance and not from, say, an FCS realm, well, we'll just gloss over all these little things. Who cares? We scored at least one more point than they did at the end of the day, and we got a win. So we're on to the next week. So that's kind of just the situation that we're in. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like, again, you know how I feel about OCs. They're a bird of a different feather. And I feel like sometimes it's just like, caution to the wind. I don't care. This is our game plan, and this is what we are doing. We have a defense. Who's our defensive coordinator? I've never met him. I don't know what's going on that side of the football. When, maybe from a coordinator standpoint, it's not so necessarily much at their feet. Maybe it's the head coach. And then he needs to be like, all right, guys, we maybe should think about emphasizing this a little bit more on this drive. Our defense just got off the field, 15-play drive going 96 yards and 6 points given up. So,
and I'll say this. It's funny you say that, because I think generally Tech fans dislike Neil Brown. I've never understood that. But the majority of Tech fans think that it was Neil Brown calling the draw plays on 3rd and 10 and 3rd and 15.
True.
No. That was the head coach at the time overruling and saying, what are you doing? Run the ball. Slow down. And fans they were like, this Neil Brown guy's a moron. It's like, we don't know what we're doing. Like, I mean, like, he calls a draw on what's the down and distance, or like, we can't, I mean, it's like, and that's Tubbs, speaking to that microphone going, this is what I'm telling you, and so, yeah,
you've got one guy that's oil, one guy that's water, and we're like, why is this not working? It doesn't make sense. But
so I'll just jerk the headset off of one of my assistant coaches, and then or the TV cameras catch it. Yeah,
he forgot every camera in town was trained upon him at that time, I guess. It's all good. I'll get my wife and mother to applaud me in the post-game press conference. That's not something that actually happened, was it? Okay, I'm getting off topic. I've said this before on this show. I'm so worn out on the up-tempo stuff, going back to the NASCAR days, whether it was Kingsbury or Kitley or any of these like modern era OCs. well, we're just gonna, we're gonna blast off and never stop going. If it is surprise, if it's having them on their heels from a stamina standpoint, I get that a little bit more, I guess. But I really would like somebody to draw up the chart over the years for me to tell me who more often is being forced into a mistake. Is it our offense, or are we actually getting the defense to make a mistake? Because sometimes I feel like maybe it's not breaking down in the way that we would want it. But again, you don't want to try to be something that you're not. So I guess you want to go down doing what you're here to do. I say that all the time about the head coach. Like, hey, do it your way. Your name's on the contract. So if you're going to go down doing it the way that you believe in. But I'm really interested to see, facing an offense that just put up 70, working with a defense that just gave up 51 to an FCS opponent. Is there any thought that maybe we can help both of these things by doing something a little bit more methodically offensively? Inside, I'm saying, are you nuts? No. But outside, I'm still maybe hoping against hope that could be the case.
Yeah, hope is not a strategy, even though I tell everybody,
right.
even though I tell everybody all the time to keep it alive. You did point out something a while ago. They did give up 215 yards on the ground the other day. Yeah. And, there may be something there, that you can take advantage of a little bit. But, to sum all of this up, you know who needs to just play really, really well. And we won't be talking about whether you were going fast, slow, who called what. It's number 2.
Mm-hmm.
If number 2 does his job and does it well, and he's the guy that we want to see and that we hope that we see, you're going to be just fine. If he's not, hold on.
All right, man.
Yeah, hold on.
I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Buckle up. We got one more round with you here this week as we continue to get ready for the Red Raiders and the Cougars. We will spend some time talking about the Pirate in our final conversation with you this week. He's set to be honored, of course, Saturday night in the Mike Leach Bowl. It's Texas Tech and Washington State coming up from Pullman. So plenty more to get to before we're done for the week. Chris, appreciate your time as always, man. Enjoyed it, and we'll see you for the next one.
Guns up, people. Guns up. And we love you, number 2 and number 1 and all the other people. Yeah. There you go. And Section 108. Yeah, we love
and
you
Section
too.
108.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the everydayers for always being out there. And, of course, one of the best ways to help us grow the show is to comment anything below. So go on and do that. Dive in. The water is warm, though a little spicy this week after one ball game in the books. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for being out there, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.